Hi everyone, welcome to Cornerstone International College's first ever live stream and skills lab. My name is Ronald Reed.
How's it going? I'm Justin Ventura.
We are your program coordinators here in the United States in the Union City main campus. So Justin, why don't you tell us a little bit about what a program coordinator actually does?
Alright, so basically what I do is, after you guys graduate and you do pass your board exam, you come over to me, give me your requirements, all your immunizations, of course take your CPR class. Then in return, what I do for you, I call the hospitals and check their availability upon their externship to see if they're available or not. So once they are, I hand over your immunizations, your CPR certification, everything that the hospital would need, of course your background check and your drug screens. And then once they tell me what day you're ready, you would do your interview, you would pass your interview, and then you would do your externships.
Awesome.
In return, Ronnie, he does a preceptorship. He's going to give you a little bit about what he does as well.
So yes, a preceptorship would be one of us, a program coordinator, coming into that facility with you after you've done your class and you've passed and you're board certified and you're working on your externship. One of us comes in and we basically help you, we train you, and we assess that you're doing the job the right way before it comes time for you to actually get paid for it. So what our job is to go in there and to make sure you're represented and you're doing the right job. So we have a little treat for you today. We've simulated a couple different areas of sterile processing in this classroom for you, this classroom environment, and we're just going to give you a brief little instrumentation overview first, and then after that we'll progress into other different areas. So first, with my assistant Justin's help, we're going to go through some of these instruments. This is a tray you'll see in a typical surgical room. It's not by any means set up appropriately. We just want you to see that these are the kind of instruments that you'll run into on a day-to-day basis doing different surgical procedures. So first, we're going to take an instrument out, we're going to explain a little bit about what it does, and then we'll tell you the process of sterilizing that instrument, or the whole set of instruments. So this first one, what does that look like to you, Justin? What letter?
Looks like an F to me.
It looks like an F to me too, right? Can anyone guess what that name is? Anybody know what the name of this instrument is or what it's even used for? All these weird doohickey parts? It's called a finicetto. It's actually a rib spreader. If you see it right here, this thing, if you turn it like this, like so, it closes and opens, right? So if you put that in a rib, access different types of organs and tissues beyond the rib cage. So that's our finicetto, and you also need to take into account when you're doing your job as a sterile processor and you're going through and you're about to, sterilize your instruments, the first rule is to disassemble any instrument that has a removable part. So this looked like just one part, right? Just one instrument. But when you get to the end, it becomes a part. It becomes two parts, and this part comes off. It's actually a three-part instrument. It's very important because little bad bugs and microorganisms like to hide in the nooks and crannies of these. So this was the finicetto. Next we have, what does that look like? What does this look like to you?
Looks like a wire cutter to me.
It looks like a pin cutter to me.
Wire or pin cutter.
I think we're both right then. It's a wire or pin cutter. It's used to cut wires or pins, obviously. As you would think, maybe if you're doing a surgery where you have insertable implants and one of them might be a little too long, you need to trim off the flash or trim off a little piece of it, you would use this to cut off that flash or that extra. You see? Wire or pin cutter. Next, you want to do one, Justin? Let's pull out one from our bag here.
So, this one, also another one of the instruments that, this is called a Lohmann bone clamp. Of course, it's shaped like this just for you can, if you twist it to the right here, it goes up and down depending on how large the bone is. It can clamp on really tightly to it. It's also another instrument that you would take apart. Of course, disassembling is the first part of cleaning. You would do that to every instrument that you can disassemble, you will disassemble. This is the Lohmann bone clamp.
Very nice, Justin. So next we can talk about this one. What does that look like? It's called the Yanker suction tip. So it's used to suck up fluids and things like that during a surgery. If you couldn't imagine if they cut into somewhere and there was excess blood or flowing blood into a surface area that you need to stay sterile or you need to work in, how would you get that blood out of there? You would use one of these. You would use a suction a yank or suction to suck that blood out of the surface area that you're working on. So the yank or suction, they also do make disposable ones, which we'll get to in a second, disposable items. But this one, not disposable. It's metal. You're going to reuse this. Let's see. What's next? Oh, this one's pretty fun, right?
Yeah.
What's this one called? Ha 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 ha.
That's why it's called the giggly.
It's called the giggly saw, right? I'm not just laughing for no reason.
He's like, tell them.
tell them. No, it's the giggly saw. If you can imagine, if you put this wire here around tissue and then went back and forth in motion, that's going to happen. It's going to cut through or serrate any type of tissue that this comes in contact with, okay? So it's called a giggly saw. Again, it's reusable. So we have to sterilize it after use.
Yes.
Let's do this one here. These two are special because they're used on the same similar type of item or object. And it would be a bone, right? This one is our bone rasp. It's used to go onto the surface. You see how it's acting on my skin? It's actually removing little pieces of skin. That's why it's actually flaking up and turning that lighter coloration. It'll do the same to bone. So if you're trying to do a biopsy or if you're trying to wear down some cancerous bone material, you would use this to file it away, and then you could test those filaments or those files and see what that actually is. This here, what is this one here?
It's the bone cutter.
Bone cutter, right? It's used to cut through bones. Look how strong those jaws are. It takes a little bit of force to close it, but if you close that on the right type of bone, it'll cut straight through a bone. So these both are used on bones. And another word for bone is what?
Osteo.
Osteo. Good job. Let's see. Ooh, what is this one? What letter does that look like?
Looks like a J to me.
It looks like a J to me too, right?
Yes, it does.
That's a good way to remember what this item is. It's called the Joker elevator, and Joker starts with the letter J, right? So the Joker elevator is used to place inside of maybe a cutter thing if you're working on your metacarpals or metatarsals or some small area you're trying to get underneath. You would insert this and raise or elevate the tissue so that you can access bone or whatever you're trying to access underneath. This is used to elevate. Tissues or veins or whatever object you're trying to elevate is used with this tool here, the Joker elevator. You want to try one, Justin? What do you think?
All right, so
I'll let you pick one.
This one's a good one.
Ooh, it goes in
The laparoscopic, insulated laparoscopic grasping forceps. This is used in a minimally invasive surgery. MIS is the abbreviations I usually like to give. It's for your abdomen, correct?
Yeah.
Your abdomen, if you wanted to have a surgery where you were trying to remove something near the abdomen and it wanted to be minimally invasive surgery for quicker recovery times, you wouldn't want to make a giant hole into your stomach, get into your abdomen. If you wanted, you can use a minimally invasive surgical instrument such as the insulated laparoscopic grasping forceps. It's grasping because if you could see the end of it, if you just put pressure on the finger rings of this instrument, it opens and closes to pull out tissue or any other kind of object you would like near the abdomen of the patient. This is an insulated laparoscopic grasping forceps. I know it's a mouthful, but after a while it'll just be second nature to you.
Nice. And the reason it's insulated is why? Because I see this one's silver and that one's black. Does that have something to do with why that one's insulated?
It does.
Oh.
Sometimes it's going to be used in power. Electricity is going to go through this instrument. There might be a light or even a camera.
A scope, yeah.
A scope. So if it's not insulated, it's going to shock you and the patient more so. So that's why they have this black finish on here. It's the rubber kind of plastic finish that it won't shock you or the patient. It's for your own safety.
Awesome. And I think this works in tandem with this device too. This one's disposable,
Sure
but it's
does.
called a trocar. This disposable trocar, like he was saying, if you're having an abdomen procedure, they would remove this, insert this into your abdomen, and then with the laparoscopic grasping forceps, use that with a scope to see what they're doing, and then also keep the patient sterile. You see what that does? How that is a conduit so that the scope and the grasping forceps can enter into the abdomen. So these are used in tandem with each other.
Together.
But they're also processed separately.
Because that trocar is disposable, the insulated laparoscopic forceps are not.
Exactly. Good job. So next we have, there's some speculums and retractors. This one, what does that look like?
Looks like a duck to me.
It does. That has nothing to do with the name. I just wanted it to go wah, wah. But it's called a nasal speculum. Speculum, right? And this is used to separate. As you can see, when you close with one action in your fingers, closing action, the top part opens up, right? That's what a speculum does.
Speculum.
It separates and opens. So you would insert it into your nose and open so that the doctor or the whoever's looking into your nose will have a better view, right? That's what that's for. Nasal speculum.
Nasal speculum.
Right. What's this one then, right?
Right. That one's the cheek retractor.
Which
Also,
cheek?
Your cheek
kidding.
in your face.
This cheek, right? It's called the cheek retractor, and I think it has a special name too, right?
It's also known as the Minnesota.
That's one of our states here in the United States, one of our 50
It
states.
is,
That's
it
why
is.
It's a little bit easier for us to memorize. It's called the Minnesota or the cheek retractor. It's used to hold the cheek to the side if they're trying to do something with the gums or a dental type of procedure. Next we have two very similar items. Ooh, what is the difference though? What are these?
Adson Rogers.
Adson rongeurs, right? A-D-S-O-N. Adson ronger. So this one is a single action here, and this one is a double action. Can any of you guess why this one's a double action and this one is only a single action? I'll give you a couple seconds. Take a good look at it. Why is this one single action? This one is a double action. Well, I'll give you the answer. When you close with your hand on this one, you're going to do one action, right? And that one action is closing. Also, look at the tip. The tip only does one action. I close my hand, and the tip closes. One single action. With this one, however, when I close my hand, what's happening to the tip? The tip does close, but look right in here. Do you see that opening? I'm using one action with my hand to close. The tip closes, but also the middle part opens. Double action. Two actions. One action with my hand creates two separate actions, a closing action and an opening action. So that's the difference. Single action, just one closing force. Double action, a closing force with some additional help. The difference is the closing force on this one is way higher in the pounds per square inch than this one. You have to use way more force to get the same closing force on this one with this one compared. So if you close with this one, it's going to grasp, and it might not be as strong as when you close with this one. You definitely have a tight grip. And last but not least, this one is used for spinal procedures. And the way we remember this is good old Kenny Rogers, right? The Western guy, Kenny Rogers. They usually carried a sidearm, a side piece, so we kind of use that as a running joke. But it's called the Kerrison rongeur. Kerrison rongeur. Do you hear how that sounds a little bit like Kenny Rogers? Kerrison rongeur. This one, like I said again, is used for spinal procedures. Awesome. So, what we're going to do next for you guys is we're going to show you how all of these instruments get processed so that they can be used again if necessary. So, from this simulated surgical experience, what they would do is, after the items are used, they're using them, they're covered in soils, as it could be fecal material, bone material, blood, anything. Once they're soiled and used, the surgeon's done with them. They go into a basin bowl, and then get sent down to decon, which is a part of the sterile processing department. So next what we're going to do for you is we're going to take you into what our simulated decontamination area is going to be. And our decontamination area also has 3 sinks in it. And when we get there, we're going to show you how we simulated those sinks, okay? So we're going to take our basin bowl, we're going to walk it right on over to our simulated decontamination area. Right? Here it is. These are our 3 sinks. And when you're in the work environment, you're going to see the same 3 sinks. And our first sink here is for soaking and manual cleaning. Our second sink here is going to be what?
Pre-rinsing.
Our pre-rinse, right? And so what's the last one going to be? What do you think maybe? If we're pre-rinsing this, we've already cleaned it, we've rinsed it off, what do you think we're going to do in the last sink? We're going to rinse it again, yeah. But why is this one different than the middle?
The treated water that's used.
You're going to treat the water that you rinse it with. What does that necessarily mean? Not too detailed, but what is treated water?
Water that's just distilled water.
Distilled.
Reverse osmosis.
Exactly.
And there's the last one.
Reverse osmosis and distilled. That's good enough for them. It's just going to be water that's different than just regular old tap water. Okay? So what we do next, when you're going to decontamination, you don't just take all of your instruments and throw them on into the first sink, do you? You're not just going to soak and rinse everything. You have to separate your instruments, right? Why do you think you would separate them? You have an idea, Justin?
To get into every last nook and cranny that you can get into. There's so many different compartments and dead-end lumen devices that require you to reach every inch of the instrument needs to be touched by the sterilant or the disinfectant. If it's not, the whole entire instrument is compromised and it's not going to work, and you can potentially pass on any type of diseases or infections to the next patient that's being used.
Very true. Another good reason to separate your instruments, remember this guy? How we told you this one's disposable? So you get your big old set of dirty instruments, you throw them all in there, you have a disposable instrument. Are you really going to reprocess this? You sure aren't. You're going to throw this one right away. Then you get to prioritize what you're going to be doing. You don't just throw them all in there, because what if you had some sharp instruments? We didn't show you too many sharps today, but think about scalpels, scissors, things like that. When you have them in the water, you go and try to dig in there, you're going to hurt yourself because all of those have bacteria all over them. So you're going to soak your instruments. Soaky, soak, soak, soak. Then you're going to actually manually clean them with a brush. You're going to inspect each instrument. You're going to look inside of each crevice and see if there's any blood or material or soils in that instrument. If there are, you take your little wire or your cleaning brush and you're going to scrub, scrub, scrub. But what do you always remember about scrubbing? Are you going to scrub it above the water?
No way.
Exactly, because of aerosolization. We'll get into that if you take the course. But aerosolization is eliminated when you put that underneath the surface of the water and you scrub it under there.
Just like when you're brushing your teeth. You're brushing your teeth too hard in front of your mirror, and you notice someone in your house gets mad at you that you're spraying all this toothpaste all over the walls, all over the mirror. Yeah. It's the same thing when you're brushing your teeth and it's shooting out all the decontaminants all over the walls. That's why you want to do it underneath the water.
Exactly. So now that we've taken these, they've been properly inspected, they've been disassembled, and they've been cleaned, we're going to rinse them once, double inspect them. Oh, they look fine. Then we're going to treat them in the final rinse with treated water. So once all of our instruments have been treated with that treated water, what is our next step, Justin? Where are we going to go from decontamination?
We're going to the prep and packaging area.
Prep and packaging. Now that sounds fun, doesn't it? Prep and packaging. What could that mean?
Probably exactly what it sounds like.
I think it is exactly what it sounds like. Now let's take a little trip over to our simulated prep and packaging area. Ooh. What's all this fun stuff?
Oh, here we go. Oh, you got our chemical indicators right here.
Good job. Yeah. So, in prep and packaging, you'll run into these perforated trays, right? Perforated because there's holes. There's also solid trays. But there's a special procedure in preparing one of these to get to look like one of these. This will be your end result. And I'll show you very briefly and very quickly how we get from here to here.
All right.
So first, what are we going to need? We'll need some equipment and some tools. And our tools of the trade will be these woven towels. a woven textile,
Woven textile.
and non-woven textiles, right? This will be what we wrap the tray in, and this is what we're going to do to keep things safe, right? Safety is always important. So the first step when you're creating this wrapped tray is going to be, if you don't mind holding this.
Sure.
Thank you, sir. To set up your station, your workstation. What I like to do is I like to take this non-woven wrap, and it's just me personally, but I like to get it started and situated first. So I look for my corners, and I try to even it out on my work area. So I have the middle of the non-woven textile in the middle of the work area. What am I going to do next, Justin?
I'm going to put that towel down for protection so that the perforated tray doesn't penetrate the non-woven wrap.
Exactly, because even the smallest pinhole in this non-woven wrap is enough space to allow 1 trillion, that's with a T, trillion microbacteria inside of this set tray that we're trying to keep sterilized, right? That's our goal. So we then, after this non-woven wrap is set, our woven wrap is placed, we'll set the mail tray directly in the middle of it. What's next? Oh, you're right.
I'm on it.
He's on it. Another woven wrap goes in there, and we're going to place this and line this along the bottom. What this does is it helps trap all the steam, because that's one of the processes we're going to be getting you ready for. All the steam that sterilizes these instruments is going to be trapped inside of this because of this towel we've placed in there, right? So next, what are we going to do? We're going to take these dried items, and we're going to assemble them inside of this tray. Now, just for time constraints, there are several different processes for assembling a tray. You'll have items sprayed out in the bottom. You'll have separate wrapped items. But for now, I will show you how to just basically set a tray and then wrap it.
All right.
So we won't set this one on there. So remember, all these pieces are disassembled, right? You're going to put them in there still disassembled, right? So our Finicetto had how many pieces?
Had 3.
3, right? Make sure you're counting and you take count of every piece. These are the 3 pieces for the Finicetto. We'll just say the names of these out loud once we put them in there. This one is the single action Addison Ronder.
Single action. Yep.
This one is the
Bone rasp.
bone rasp.
That one.
Yep. This one is our wire or pin cutter. This one is the
Yankered suction.
yanker suction. Right? This one is our
Kenny
kerosene. Oh no.
They call it we remember it by Kenny Rogers, but
Yep.
it's the kerosene ronger.
Kerosene Ronger. Good job. This one is our
Cheek retractor for your
cheek
face.
retractor for your face.
Or the Minnesota. Either
Exactly.
one. Every facility is different. They have different names for them.
This one here,
The double action Addison Ronger.
double action Addison Ronger. This one here,
The not Batman, but the Joker.
yeah,
elevator.
the Joker elevator. I like.
Yeah.
And then this one,
The bone cutter.
bone cutter. Good job. And what about this one?
The giggly saw.
The giggly
It's
saw,
just
right?
odd why they call it giggly saw. It doesn't seem like
It'd be
it's
that pleasant.
any pleasant, yeah.
To induce laughter. No. And this Loman bone clamp, remember what we said about all
Taking it
detachable?
apart.
Mhm.
Disassembly is key
Yes, it is.
to being completely sterilized.
And this, again, is a 3-part item. Here it goes. 2, 3. And lastly, our
Nasal speculum.
Da-da-dun. Okay. So, if you don't mind, thank you very much. Our next step, after you've... This is a very, very basic setup for a tray. The next step to this tray setup would be to make sure everything's in there. Take another woven textile and place it on the top. What is that going to do?
Allowing steam penetration and to cover all surfaces of the instruments. It'll help for the steam sterilization method.
And also, it's going to help protect it from making holes in the top of the tray.
Again, also, yes,
Awesome.
definitely.
Good job, Justin. So, next we'll just briefly show you how to wrap this, but I think I forgot something. What's
You
this
did.
guy here? This is also known as a chemical indicator. It's going to let you know that when you sterilize this, it was done the correct way. But you place this inside, face up, directly in the middle of your tray, because that would be the hardest, most difficult place for steam sterilization to take place. So if that tests positive, you know that your process was completed thoroughly and efficiently.
That's it.
Exactly. So next we're going to actually do a wrapping of this. I'm going to go through and then we're going to tape it up afterwards, okay? So the first step I like to do is take this corner closest to me, make sure it's lined up with the middle of the tray, and we're going to take it and wrap it or fold it all the way over the top of this tray, right? Like so. Next, what we do is we make sure all of our seams are nice. We're going to lift up and tuck under just the top fold, right? And that creates a seam, an edge right there, right? Let's push that in just a little bit more. Right. Awesome.
All right. Looks good.
Thank you, sir. Next, what do? We're going to pull this in and we're going to work on our back corners. So we pull that in just a little bit, find our other corner, and wrap that over to the side. If you can see, what we've just created is a back seam. See? That's what we're creating right there. Now with this taut, you're going to work on the other end. You're going to grab that corner and pull it on over, right? Like such. Oops, sorry guys. Pull it over as such. Awesome. Next, what do we do? Now that we have our back seam done, we're going to work on the front seam. So with our elbow holding down that last fold, we're going to make sure our top is nice. We have enough room. Sometimes you could pinch in the sides just to recompensate. And when you have a nice edge, pull that right on over the top. Right? What I like to do then is I turn it around away from me and I take this last little bit and you tuck it on inside. And that, my friends, is how you wrap a tray. Next, what we need to do to make sure this stays like this, we're going to tape it. Now there's special tape we use. It's called a process 1 indicator, level 1 process indicator. I'm sorry.
That's it.
A level 1 process indicator, also known as
autoclave tape.
Autoclave tape. Now when you look at this tape, you'll notice there's white bands in between the tan parts, right? What those white bands do is if this process is done correctly, they'll turn black. And that's why you'll be able to tell if the process was done completely or correctly, which is also why it's called a process indicator. So you take this strip and it's going to go straight across the top as such. Next we need 2 more strips of autoclave tape. Those are going to go from the front onto the bottom, from the front onto the bottom, correct? I'm going to just, for all intents and purposes of looking pretty, we're just going to move this down to here, right? So what are we going to do next? We have to label this, right?
That's good. With
a non-toxic permanent marker. So how do we label this again? What are we writing on here? Today's date, right? Doesn't that go on there? So you'll need the date. You'll need the name of the tray, which is mayo, our mayo tray. And you have to put the destination where it's going to go. So we'll just say this one's going to OBGYN. And then you have to initial it. My name is Ronald Reed again, so I'm going to write RR. That lets anyone who touches this or sees this know who was responsible for processing this tray. Nice, right?
All right.
We're done with what area is this called again?
The prep and packaging area.
Prep and packaging area. So where do we go with this? What are we going to do? We're going to take this and put it onto a case cart?
Case cart.
Yep. And then we go and sterilize this. We're going to go to the sterilization area next. And there's different sterilization methods, but for today in our simulated classroom, we're just going to show you we have a tabletop sterilizer. This one's used in most dental facilities. As you can see, it's like an autoclave where it gets really, really hot inside of there, basically under different parameters like pressure, heat, and time. So we already have one simulated in here for you with some awesome peel pouches, which I do want to give you a quick little show of what these do. These keep single items the ability to be processed and sterilized without having to put them in a tray. So what you're going to do, and they get their name peel pouches because you peel them open, right? And it's called a paper, because one side is paper, and plastic peel pouch. So in order to reseal this, once you put this in there, we are lucky enough to have a sealer here. And it's very, very easy. It's foot pedal powered. All you're gonna do is put this closed in. You see how it's open and you can get inside of there? You're gonna put that open end, right inside of this machine and step down briefly. Indicator lights come on and tell you when it's on and when to lift up your foot. So as I press down, you'll notice the indicator light switch to up to tell me the process is done. And I'll do it right now. See how quick that was? And now it's closed. Nice, right? So once these are placed inside your sterilizer, you set it to the right parameters based off the manufacturer's instructions. And the parameters for most steam sterilization are
3 to 4 minutes at 275 degrees Fahrenheit at 28 to 30 pounds per square inch.
Oh, so that's time, temperature, and pressure,
PSI.
right? PSI. So you set yours to the appropriate time, temperature, PSI. You'll turn the machine on, and you'll wait for it to cook.
And again, this is just a smaller steam sterilizer. Of course, if you could see the wrapped basin set that we had the wrapped instruments that we did, it's not going to fit in here. We couldn't get a huge steam sterilizer. So this is just our small tabletop steam sterilizer. It's a miniature version of what you're going to be putting into later in the real decontamination or sterilization room.
So then these right here are called BIs. Remember this guy here was a chemical indicator, a CI. You guys want to take a guess what a BI means? Chemical indicator, indicator, starts with a B. It's a biological indicator. And what that means is inside this tiny little file, there are 1 million test spores. Now, a spore is a type of bacteria, microbacteria that is very harmful for us. So what we do is we place this inside of the machine, and what it does is it tells us if the machine is working properly, because this machine should be able to kill all 1 million spores. So if you put this inside of there and test it and run your machine, you take it out, you will put it inside the incubator, which we have here, and it basically incubates that test file. So after the certain specific amount of time has passed, if this machine has done what it's supposed to do, the test spores will change color. And that's how you're able to tell if your machine is working properly. If no change occurs, then you know there's something wrong with your machine, and the instruments you put in there to be sterilized are not being properly sterilized. So that's one of our test methods to make sure that all of our instruments are working. And that's also a part of our job, is to not only make sure that we're doing the right thing to sterilize instruments, is to make sure that our machinery is working and functioning properly. So next, after we sterilize things, where do they go? What do you do with a sterilized set?
You might want to store them.
Yeah, I think we should store them. So that takes us to what area again?
The sterile storage.
Sterile storage. This is going to be our simulated sterile storage area. What you would do is you would have racks and racks on racks of different types of set trays that are cleaned and sterilized, and they're going to sit here and wait until they're ready to be used. And what's it called when you have something in an area where it's totally clean and you're just going to treat it as if it were always clean? It's a certain type of presentation.
An aseptic presentation.
Exactly. Your sterile storage area has to be under aseptic presentation conditions, which means totally clear of any type of contaminant. So these are our basin trays, and these are our, what are these? Just a regular tray.
Flat.
Oh, flat tray, good job. So this would be a simulated sterile processing department. We took you from the surgery room to the decontamination area with the 3 sinks, to our prep and packaging area, to our sterilization area, to our sterile storage area. And then from here, once the OBGYN needs this instrument set, your other responsibility is distribution. We would take this set, place it onto a cart, and wheel that cart straight to the OBGYN until they're ready to use it. They're ready to do their procedure. They open it up and they inspect and make sure, hey, let me see it in here. It's like Christmas time, right? Ah, I can get to work now, right? That's exactly what's going to happen in a simulated hospital, facility, or environment. So next we're going to come up to the front. We'll have a few question and answering back and forth oral discussion. So we'll leave the floor open. Questions for us. Again, my name is Ronald and this is Justin. We're more than happy to answer your questions.
All right, is there any popping up yet?
Oh, actually, if you have any questions, what I would like for you to do, if you don't have the time to ask them now, make sure you submit them online. And the way to do that is to go to the website. Do you know the website?
Yeah, it's admissions at the Cornerstone, admissions at thecornerstone.edu.ph.
Right, that's admissions at thecornerstone.edu.ph. Remember, thecornerstone.edu.ph. Thanks you guys so much. I really appreciate all of you who tuned in, or all of you in the future are going to tune in. And I hope you guys take this as a learning experience and take it as a motivational message to get you guys to be to where you want to be. Because I know any of you who've taken this class or think about taking this class are doing it because you want a better future, a brighter future, a happier, more successful future. And it's our jobs here to make sure that that can happen for you. And we do all we can. I promise we do all we can to make sure that happens.